And there were some days I was like, motherfucker, you just need to embrace being a writer, because quite honestly, this acting train is not leaving the station.
I'm looking like, you and I are not on the same page.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm living in a complete different reality than you are.
The moment you fall into disconnect, it's not working. We're just not aligned no more. We're going to go separate ways in life because, we're just disconnected too much. I spend so much time talking to my clients about the importance of proper nutrition outside of the gym. And the number one area of struggle is not getting enough protein. So Boss and Kevin developed Vita Hustle One superfoods for this very reason. This plant-based blend contains 86 superfood ingredients that support muscle recovery and overall well-being. It's not just about what you do in the gym, it's also about how you fuel your body. So try Vita Hustle One superfood in vanilla bean, dark cocoa, which is my fave, or superfood greens in the popular berry flavor. Use code MEAGAIN for 15% off your first order.
Hey guys, it's me again. Today we are so lucky we have a special guest to talk about all of the phases of life that women go through. Her name is Vanessa Spencer. She is mom, wife, producer, development executive, living here in LA, but originally from the Bronx. And we want to pick her brain. She's the absolute GOAT and just so pleasant to be around and speak to. So we are, excited to have her here. Naisha?
I'm really excited. I know you're from New York. I love my fellow New Yorkers.
I'm a New York girl, yeah, all the way through.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I was so excited to get the text and be able to join. So
of course.
Congratulations to you ladies for starting this new venture. That's huge.
Thank you.
Very huge.
I'm excited. It's really an outlet for me, but I want to have people like yourself, women like yourself, who are just so inspiring, encouraging, yes. And for you, you're like the GOAT of all things. You're like at a different phase in your life where I can learn from, and I think many other viewers can also learn from your journey. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us all of it.
No, first of all, let me just commend the two of you for taking this opportunity to create an outlet for yourself. I think that so many women, and moms in particular, get caught up with feeling as though they don't have time to create space for themselves and create outlets for themselves outside of maybe a quick little mani-pedi, occasional facial massage, or like downtime when they lock themselves in the bathroom and pretend not to be around.
Right.
So, yeah, I think conversations are incredibly important, and for you to create the space for yourself is amazing. So congratulations, and thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm on this new, as I hear you say this, new journey. I am on a new journey. I have had multiple different careers along my adult life, even post-children. I started in casting in 2003. Wow. End of 2001, and moved to LA early 2003, started casting with Sheila Jaffe and stayed with her for what felt like an eternity.
Wow.
But like such a special time in my life. And that's really what brought me to LA, was this opportunity to really move out of casting in New York, which was so seasonal, and it was like a lot of commercials, and every music video that we all look back at and go, those were the days. That's when music was music. So that was a special time for me. But yeah, moving to LA really put me square in the middle of what Hollywood really is. And so I did shows like Entourage and Ballers, and worked adjacently on Sopranos. Did movies like Ted and A Million Ways to Die in the West, and McFarland, and Be Cool, and Two Guns, and a bunch of stuff. That was all fun and exciting, but I was quickly balancing that with being a new mom, and I've got two kids who are like 16 months apart, so it was very much like having twins and balancing a full-time career, and it got tricky at times, and I certainly got lost in the mix. Also having a husband who's a writer and producer and in production, like my kids were spending a lot of time with who I call my sister wife, our nanny, who's amazing. But I think what changed it for me was when my son called me one night and left me a voicemail, because I couldn't even pick up the phone. It was like 8 o'clock, and he was just in tears and was like, I'm so lonely, Bella hogs Verlice all to herself, and so I'm by myself, and I just miss you. And I was like, oh God, something's got to give. So I transitioned out of casting full time and started to consult, and then started to develop with my husband more of our projects and working on the shows that he was on. And then I kind of segued into just being like CEO of the Spencer house and the Spencer family, and what that was. Running things, making sure everybody was at Trek and food was in the house, and this one had all the stuff he needed for his project, and same thing with my daughter. And that was an exciting time because I really took momming very seriously.
Right.
And I think I wanted to do all the things that my mom couldn't do for me because she was a full-time mom and, full-time employee. And I was a latchkey kid, and I wanted my kids to experience something different.
Right.
Because I understood what my parents were doing for us, right? And grateful that they could do it and provide a good life. But I miss my mom not being at the play or being able to be picked up and go to a play date, or even having to give up being a dancer because I just didn't have parents who could do that schedule kind of thing. So I devoted that time to them. And then all of a sudden, I started back to casting and started producing more. And Chris and I produced a movie, and an opportunity fell in my lap to run a talent-led production company. And so I was the EVP of a talent-led production company for a little bit. And recently transitioning out of that, and now just going back to being an independent producer. But all of those different transitions that have occurred over the last, let's say, like 10 years, at times can feel a little scary. And even this last one, did not so much that it felt scary, just I felt such a greater sense of disappointment this time around because I was so excited to be in this new phase.
Yep.
And then an unexpected turn happened, and now I'm just quickly trying to pivot back because I have a son who's in college, a freshman at Howard.
Congratulations.
I'm so excited. And it just really signaled to me that, wow, I'm at 46 starting this path of entering into the first phase of half empty nesting. And I've got a junior in high school. Bella's a junior in high school. And soon that halfway through the year almost already. And I remember how quickly that year and a half went with my son. So soon enough, we'll definitely be empty nesters. And I just want to make sure that I have found something that I can sink my teeth into and be happy and enjoy this new phase in my life. Because, I'm embracing 46. All of what 46 is coming with.
You don't look 46 at all.
Thank you. Is a few telling my kids, get your shit together, get your sneakers on, get the bag in the car, and let's fucking go. For sure, there are plenty of those conversations, and my kids will tell you. My motto is always, I ain't gonna let them age me. I'm not going to let them age me.
That was me the other day with Knox, and he's only 3. I'm like, you're not about to do this to me.
Oh, no. Oh, no, ask Bella and Chris. They'll tell you how many of those conversations we had in the car. I'm like, I don't have the patience for this. Gosh. I'm sorry. I'm not built that way. Just go,
girl,
get it
I'm
together.
telling you, I'm already knowing. I'm right behind you.
I'm feeling
but
it too.
I do want to get into like the mom stuff and the wife stuff. But first, I do want to know, like, what was your experience being a producer, a female producer in the entertainment industry?
I will say this. I think that being a woman in the entertainment industry, especially on this end of the business, I don't know what it's like to be talent. And I'm sure that there are plenty of headaches that come along with being talent and experiencing microaggressions and just having to put up with like what a male perspective of being a female is and just how much they want to cater to you kind of thing. But certainly more on the business end of it, and being a woman of color, like a biracial woman of color, is a trip.
Yep.
It's definitely a trip. Because I will say, white men don't necessarily handle it very well when you clap back at them, or when you take a firm position because you know you're right. And white women are almost worse than the men. And, I love all my friends who are of the Caucasian persuasion. I love them. I absolutely do. And they're in my life because I know they're good people, right? Like we just vibe, and that's what it is. But I will say it is, and it has always been interesting working with people and being around people who just be and have always just been and have been taught to just be is just enough. And even if it's the most mediocre and the most basic, they have taught that is more than enough. And we've never been taught that that's enough. We've always been taught better, stronger, faster, da-da-da-da-da. And so it's hard at times to be in the business with that mentality, dealing with people who almost feel at times like they're just tolerating you or entertaining you, and expect you to have just a little bit of a perspective or almost speak when spoken to kind of thing. So yeah, being a producer in this business as a woman is incredibly challenging. Yeah. Oftentimes they don't expect you to have the perspective or the experience that you have, or to almost speak when spoken to, or stay in your lane, whatever that lane is that they've decided for you. Okay. Not really understanding just how much you have to offer. Yep.
Or not really wanting to understand.
Yeah, and that's really a lot of it. Like, I think that most times they just feel like you're just there. Yeah. And cool. You're going to be here, and that's enough that you're here. And it's enough that we've brought the seat to the table for you, regardless of what the seat looks like.
And so you had to work that much harder to get the respect, I guess.
Absolutely. Look, this last project that Chris and I produced, it was working with a lot of people who had never produced a movie before. It was their first time. But because they were the financiers and, were the people who greenlit the project and sort of took the project off the shelf and gave it life, there was a lot to tolerate. And one of them was a woman. And it was like, God, I can't believe I have to fight you this hard. Just be secure and be confident in what you know, and acknowledge what you don't, and be okay with not knowing it, and use this as a learning experience. I shouldn't have to fight you the way that I'm fighting you. Yeah. And look, I'm sure being from New York doesn't help.
No, it does not.
Because I will tell you, not that I'm ever disrespectful to people, but I think people misunderstand my directness as having an attitude or being too confrontational. And I'm not a confrontational person, but I'm going to call it how it is. And I'm going to say it how it is so that everything is clear and there's no room for confusion. And that gets me in trouble.
Yeah. The aggression in you.
Yeah.
You're aggressive. I am. Okay.
Right, but I always feel like, would you say I was aggressive if...
Y'all are passive-aggressive. How about that one?
Yeah, or would you say I was aggressive if I was a man?
Exactly.
Yeah, and you certainly wouldn't be saying I was aggressive if I was a white man or a white woman, and it's really coming from me being my race, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Being a black woman.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I'm sure... I'm just going to give you a little TLC. Your beauty doesn't help, the intimidation and just jealousy that I'm sure you've had to experience as well.
I honestly, I will say that I don't often say that out loud, but because and not because I think of myself as beautiful, but...
Girl, you are beautiful.
Thank you. But I will say that also has been really challenging. Yeah. I think most times people make the assumption of thinking like, oh, it's a face or it's just a favor or whatever, right? And that has become really tricky. Yeah. That definitely has become tricky, especially working with other women on a big team who think that they know best. Right. That has at times been hard.
Oh my gosh. So yeah. Okay, well, thanks for sharing. We do have a TikTok to watch.
I've always been fascinated about how much more well-behaved we have to be than men are.
In what way?
I've worked with a lot of different men, obviously, as we all have. But it was just always fascinating to me because I did get a moniker of being like a diva, which I never felt I deserved, which I don't deserve. And because I've always been a hard worker, always on time, always, doing what I'm supposed to do, showing up, being a professional. and getting that label because you reach a certain amount of
care
success.
about something enough to
or
give your
voice
opinion,
opinion.
right?
Or even I always felt sometimes crippled to voice my opinion, especially, because with certain directors and the boys club that they form sometimes makes you feel like, oh, I can't say anything. And I was always very outspoken and very strong in certain situations, but I always was fascinated about how I could see somebody else being late or somebody else being belligerent to a crew, or whatever, and it being totally accepted. Everybody's like, hey, how are you today?
Yeah.
It's like, meanwhile, I would, show up 15 minutes late and be berated. We are not allowed to have certain opinions or be a certain way or be passionate, be even passionate about something. Like, I don't feel this is right or whatever, and be like, God, she's really
she's
difficult.
It's like, am I difficult? Because
or am I an artist who has an opinion?
Yeah.
Who cares? It's a sign of your investment.
Okay, I mean, what Jayla was saying is like dead on to what your experience has been. And I've actually heard some similar stories about how much harder she's had to work, how much harder Rosie Perez, I think, spoke about it long ago, how much harder they had to work to get to the places that they are at. But also what I'm seeing is like the endurance that you have to have, you know what I mean, to continue. And I'm sure, Naisha, you can relate, especially as fellow New Yorkers, Staten Island, Bronx.
In a sense of like just how we come off in our demeanor as a fellow New Yorker. I feel like we're not aggressive, but we're like straightforward, straight on, like a straight arrow. Being that you are such a success in what you're doing and you're still thriving and growing, what kind of tips could you give? And even if it's not in the industry realm, because I feel like from a day-to-day, people do get into rooms with men or people that are a little bit more, and then women are kind of looked a little bit more, shh, I'm talking. Like, what kind of tips would you give to kind of outshine that so that the person can be their best selves and give themselves, in a sense, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I know everybody loves to throw this, adage out there of don't dim your light. Be who you are. Like, be confident in who you are. And look, there's a very fine line between like confidence and arrogance. And being confident is not being arrogant.
Right.
And I think you need to walk into these rooms, recognize what you know, recognize why you're there, recognize the position that you're being brought into that room to fill, and hold that space for yourself. Nobody's going to hold it for you. So hold that space for yourself. Don't pretend to know what you don't know, because there are going to be plenty of other people at the table pretending to know what they don't know. So know what you know. Be willing to learn. Be willing to ask questions so that you can learn, or ask questions to move the conversation forward, and maybe even allow people space to recognize, oh, you know what? I never thought of it from that perspective, or I haven't thought about, we need to think about that as a just in case. And be okay with sometimes being the problem.
Wow.
Like, be okay with being the problem. I've learned really quickly, especially from this last experience, that it's okay that people may have thought I was a problem, because I was brought on to fill a position, to do a job. And the way that the job was described to me, I did that job every single day for the year and change that I was there.
Wow.
And no one can question that. I don't care, even if there are people out there, they're just questioning it to have gossip and make themselves feel good. But I filled that job, and I protected the talent that I was working for. I made sure that I was making other people think about things they hadn't thought about before for her. I was making sure that they were thinking of things from a new perspective. And I know that I made her feel cared for. And that was part of my job, outside of reading scripts, giving notes, coming up with ideas for new projects, pitching projects. There was so much more that I was doing. And maybe because we had a personal relationship, that we'd known each other for 20 years outside of work.
Okay.
But also because that's just who I am. Like, when I commit to something, I commit with my whole self, sometimes at the sacrifice of myself, and sometimes at the sacrifice of my family. And so, yeah, I'm okay. I'm getting to be really okay at this phase in my life, being labeled by people, because I recognize that the label makes them feel better. The label makes them feel like they know how to deal with me. I know who I am. And I'm really starting to come into a space where I'm okay knowing who I am at my core and not needing to convince people of that, because I just am.
Wow. You are so, I love it. You can make me get teary-eyed.
Thank you.
Because your confidence is coming off in such a strong way, but it's like exuding peace. Like, you're at a space of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that for so long, people mistook that just sense of, this is who I am. And like, when I approach people, I approach them from a human perspective, and I'm approaching to give you my all so like we could be successful. And I vibe off of what you give. And if you give me peace, I give you peace. If you give me angst, I will return the angst, because I have to somehow protect myself. But in that angst, I'm trying to get you to another place where that leaves you, and then it leaves us space to really create and do good things.
Wow, I love that.
But I can't give you what you're not willing to give yourself. And I can't necessarily teach you that either. Like, sometimes people just aren't at a space or in a place where they're teachable, because they're just not there. They're not open. So you can't teach somebody who's unwilling to be taught.
That's huge. I love that advice. And you said, you referenced your family dynamic while protecting your family dynamic. I do want to get into that, because Boss and I were so excited the time that we were on your guys' show,
We had
date
so much fun with
night.
you guys.
We want you guys to run that thing on back.
We want to bring it back.
And we also want to go on an actual date night with you.
We
and
have
Chris.
to go on an actual date night. We actually have to go
So tell
on an
us,
actual
how
date
did
night.
you and Chris meet first?
Oh.
And then how has it been kind of navigating your guys' journey, both of you guys being career focused? I know you had the transition of like, okay, I'm going to be the pillar at home, but ultimately, how was it like early on before you guys had kids, and then kind of we'll get into implementing the kid factor? Okay, so I can't stand using plastic water bottles. Path is the first refillable and 100% recyclable bottled water packaged in a sleek and sturdy aluminum container, which I love. They make it easy for our family to feel good about making a positive impact on the environment, including our kids. Also, their bottles are fully customizable. There's this one particular limited edition Path water bottle featuring the Ninja Turtle characters. My boys absolutely love it. They actually fight over who gets to have it, and it's just a great way to teach them and the next generation the importance of reuse. And you can create your own custom Path water bottle for your next event. I was actually just thinking about it. I wish for all of our 3 gender reveals that we were able to have a team girl or team boy water bottle for the party. Of course, it would have been all team boys. But so visit drinkpathwater.com to check out the coolest designs and to create your own today.
So, yeah, it's been a long journey. It's been 20 years. So I moved here to LA in March of 2003, and I met Chris, I want to say late October, early November of that same year.
Okay.
We started dating, and then we had a little bit of time off, and then we got back together, and then I'd say probably within 4 or 5 months of getting back together, we kind of made the conscious decision, but not intentional decision to start a family, because I really wasn't sure I wanted to get married.
He trapped you, girl.
Well, yeah, like I think we trapped each other in the way of like, we knew we wanted it. Look, I was 26, about to be 27. Chris was 36, about to be 37. He had no kids and had kind of thought of himself as like not sure he was going to settle down. But thought he wanted to settle down, but didn't know when and who. And all of a sudden, I walked in, and when I'd moved out to LA, I was just getting over being in this on-again, off-again relationship for a number of years, and decided that I was going to choose me. And really, like, the next person I was going to engage in a relationship with had to be completely available.
Okay.
Cut to, Chris wasn't totally available at the time, which is why we took some time off, because I was like, I can't do this again. Cut to, when he came back into my life, he was like, I'm ready, I'm sure. And so I ended up one day going back east for a friend's wedding, And all night I kept getting up to go to the bathroom, and I was like, oh, I never go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Like, I never do this. And came back to LA, took a pregnancy test at work, and I was like, wow, I'm pregnant. And I had PCOS. So, like, in my early 20s, like, my gynecologist was like, you're going to have a really hard time having babies. We should think about freezing eggs. I was like,
Wow.
I'm 21. Like, I'm not thinking about babies, and I'm not thinking about freezing eggs. Like, what are we talking about here? And she was like, I'm just letting you know, your FSH and da-da-da levels are really off. Like, if you want a family, you really have to start paying attention. I was like, you're fast tracking me to a life I'm not interested in, right?
And by the way, the pressure that you feel at 21 to say kids, I mean,
I wasn't even graduated from college.
Yeah, no.
So yeah, it's like, I'm a teacher right now, and I have 28 kids in a classroom, but like,
Oh, you're a teacher.
I went to NYU for my
a teacher
degree in
too
education.
in New York. Then I
See?
came here and tried to figure it out.
You see, like, we are very connected, very connected.
So boom, you're pregnant.
So boom, cut to all these years. I was like, this bitch said I was going to have a hard time getting pregnant. What happened to that? Like,
Then I had 2 babies.
and then I had 2 babies back to back.
Back to
but
back.
like, I've always been a believer, like, the universe provides. So ended up pregnant, and Chris was like so excited, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's great that he's excited. And he was like, maybe we should get married. And I was like, I don't know, we should get married. And he was like, but no, I think like I'm too old to be calling you my baby mama. So we ended up getting married and had Christopher. And by the time I was married, I was already pregnant with Bella, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, when I tell you they are back, he was barely 9 months old, and she was already in utero. And it was like, how are we here? But here we are. So, yeah, our early years of even being married were not only just still continuing to learn each other and grow our love for each other and figure out our partnership, it was also parenting.
Yeah.
So it was hairy in the beginning, but fortunately we had other couples like David and Julie Arnold, Boris and Nicole Kojo, Dondre and Sally Whitfield.
Oh my gosh, what a great group.
There was a group. There was Kev and his previous life, and we were all together in this journey, and many of us still new in that journey of dating one another and being married, and that helped tremendously.
Yeah.
Chris was waffling between, did he still try and pursue acting, or should he really just embrace being a writer? And there were some days I was like, motherfucker, you just need to embrace being a writer, because quite honestly, this acting train is not leaving the station, and I'm working. I got 2 kids, you got 2 kids. We need to figure it out.
Right.
And pushing him out of the nest. And we would go fisticuffs, like in arguments of, you have to decide what it is that you want to do. Like, this is what I'm doing, and you need to just take a jump. And maybe you could Larry David this shit sometime later down the road, and that's great. But you've got a gift, and that gift pays really well. And that gift, like, is going to feed our family. So you got to figure it out. And he did. And it was like, I'll do all of this, and I'll take care of all of this on this end while you go all in on that end. And so, yeah, I think, a lot of it too is just playing different pieces on the, let's say, game of life, or like the Monopoly board, right? Sometimes you're the shoe, sometimes you're the schnauzer, sometimes you're the top hat. Like, like you got to be all these different pieces. Sometimes you own Marvin Gardens, sometimes you own Park Place. You know what I mean? Or Oriental, like whatever it is, Baltic Avenue, Yeah, like you just have to roll with the punches. And look, for much of our early years, we were living on Baltic Avenue. Like we had a great house, but like, that bank account was very Baltic Avenue, because times were tough. Then we went through like the writer strike, the first writer strike.
Oh my
then we went
gosh.
through a recession. Then we went through like all these different phases. But togetherness is what kept us together. The drive to never not push him. Like, I think people thought I was crazy when I was forcing him for us to send our kids to preschool that was $1,500 a month. People were nuts when I was like, no, we're sending our kids to private school. Like, that's not an option. I will do whatever. I'll lick toilets if I got to lick toilets, but that's what they're going to do. Like, that's what we're doing. And because if we don't continue to set these goals and set them up for what we didn't have as kids, like, they're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to sacrifice if you're willing to sacrifice, and this is just what we're going to do. And with every push and with every little thing, he kept climbing and he kept rising. And it was perfect timing when the kids Bella had finally started elementary school full time. And she had moved into kindergarten, and I was like, I'm now ready to go back to work. And I had been home and not working full time for a couple of years, probably about 4 or 5 years at that point. I was just consulting on, jobs that had been coming in occasionally. And then I went back full time for a number of years. And we just always filled that gap in space for each other. And I think that's what it's been, is just your roles are going to like shape shift as your relationship grows and as your kids are growing. And it's okay. It's totally okay. And some days you'll feel panicked, like, what's happening and can we keep doing this? And sometimes you'll feel totally disconnected. But it's in those moments of when you feel disconnected, you've got to really lean in. And I think that's what we've done over these nearly 20 years that we've been together. I mean, and believe me, there have been some days I've looked at him while he's sleeping and I'm like, I think tonight's the night I'm going to jail for smothering him, because I hate him in this moment. Like, I hate you right now is like such a thing. But I've always
right now.
Yeah, like just right now. Like, I know by morning it'll probably pass, or maybe I'll wake up in the morning and I won't hate you as much. But like, I've never hated him more than I've loved him.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
You mentioned disconnect, and Naisha has a 3-year-old son. I am just like you as far as my boys are 16 months apart, Knox and Cade, and then I just decided to throw another one in there.
Another baby, and why not?
20 months after that. So...
Because you're in that mode, so it's good.
Oh my gosh.
You're in that mode. It was like...
But listen, I'm disconnected right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm looking at Boss, and I don't know if you've had a similar situation with Damon, where I'm looking like, you and I are not on the same page.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm living in a complete different reality than you are. You know what I mean? And then you have that like... you're going out, you're fostering your passions and your career, and I'm sitting here at home. Was that a challenge, finding your identity again, when you said, okay, I'm taking time off from my career?
It was. And here's the hard part too. Like, I think because in the beginning I didn't want to be married, I always looked at it as like, I'd rather just be madly in love with somebody and have a great relationship and not be locked into this thing. But I'm glad we did it, because I think sometimes it gets too easy to be able to jump out, and I probably would have jumped out had we not said I do, right? And I loved him enough to want him to be in my life forever in that committed way. But to lose myself and then try and find myself again. Yeah, like first of all, when I met him, I didn't realize that he had this like love affair with golf, like he did.
He is a golfer.
So like, it's sick. Like, so when I first had Christopher, and he would leave in the morning to go play golf for hours, and I would be like, I'm home alone with this baby all day because you've been golfing. Like, I could only think about a lot of occasions, like wanting to just tee his head up and take out the driver and just like drive it 390, because I just couldn't understand what that was. And I didn't think he could understand where I was. I mean, some days I would just look at Christopher and weep, because I'm like, I am the only person in this world that could keep you alive. Like, I was the only one to keep you alive before you got here, and I am literally feel like I'm the only person to keep you alive now. Then came Bella, and I was like, now I've got 2 motherfuckers to keep alive.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening? And he's still playing golf.
But
like,
men, they're cut from a
fuck?
different cloth. I don't even think it's a natural, I mean, it isn't, right?
No.
They don't have that natural desire to caregive. It's like, dad's here, let's rough shit up. Mom will fix it. And so you almost feel trapped, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, although you may have a moment to go to get your nails done, you're
That
really
shit is
still stressed.
fleeting.
Like, is everything still okay at home?
Or you're stressed because you're getting a text like, can you tell me where this is? I'm like,
Right.
did you look in the top left drawer, like where it's been for, I don't know, the last 3 years where I've left the stapler in the kitchen, in the drawer, next underneath the toaster? And like, you're like, come
They don't
on,
know
we
where
can't
anything's
live
at.
in the same house and then you not know these things. Like that drives me nuts.
Then you feel like you can't get away because it's like once you get away, it's like
For
in
what?
your head you get away for like an hour. It's like in your head you're just thinking all the chaos that's going on.
100%. Like literally 100%. Even when I go away, he's like, why don't you go on girls trips? I said, for what? Because it's not going to be a trip. You're going to be calling me. She's going to be calling me. He's going to be calling me. And then what?
Right, everyone's calling.
And everybody's calling and texting and I'm not really away. Then I'm like having to teleport myself back to the house
Right.
and out of a vacacion with the girls because, y'all can't keep it together for a few minutes. I mean, even recently when Christopher was leaving for college.
Oh my gosh.
Like in those
Congrats.
last few months of school, as he was home and in the house, like I kind of just kept saying to myself, like, where is my husband in all of this? Like, he's golfing, he's taking golf trips, he's doing this. And mind you, let me footnote this because he'll hear this and want to die. But he's an incredible dad.
Oh my gosh, love him.
He lives, sleeps, and breathes for his kids. And everything he does is motivated by his love for family and puts them first in that way. But I don't think that men think of their downtime in the same way that moms do.
Oh, no.
And I don't think they prioritize their downtime in the same way. I think often men think because they're just physically in the house that they're home and spending time. And so that's become what our disconnect really gets to be, is what his sense of home time and presence really is, rather than just being physically present.
And that
That's
is
the disconnect.
exactly what Boss and I are going through right now. And we've worked through it in therapy to where he's like, I'm always in the house. Well, I stopped traveling, like this, where he thinks that he's here.
Yeah.
But truthfully, there's been times where he's been in the house and I'm like, yo, he's making my situation way harder right now.
100%.
Like, I'd rather you be
You better
gone.
not be here. 100%.
Because it's just, and now that I have so many moving factors with the 3 boys, I have like a structured and scheduled routine.
Yeah.
And
They haven't learned it. He hasn't learned it yet.
No.
Yeah.
And it's, oh, you're just militant, you're too much. Although I will say, now that we do have the 3rd baby, Cruz, he's like, I see what you did here, because we do have our moments. We do have our opportunities to go on our date night or try and do things to kind of like foster our relationship. But there is that disconnect there. It's like we're completely on 2 different playing fields.
So how do you, the big question I feel like, because I feel like in my relationship too, there's disconnect. We fall into disconnect. And it could be for people, the moment you fall into disconnect, it's not working. We're just not aligned no more. We're going to go separate ways in life because, we're just disconnected too much. How do you, it's like bringing it back to the connection in a sense of understanding that we're different and we're disconnected, obviously. Can we get reconnected?
Yeah, I think look, it doesn't always have to happen this way, but for us, it always became these kind of like big arguments, these really uncomfortable conversations. And I always looked like the troublemaker. And he used to say, you love to argue, you love to fight. I was like, no, you're just not comfortable with confrontation. And so your discomfort causes this to turn into an argument rather than a discussion. But if I don't bring it up, this is going to continue on. And where do we end up? Because I like being alone. Like, I'm okay. I like my whole self. Like, I'm a very okay person being alone. Like, when people leave the house and I get to be alone for, I don't know, the whole day, the whole 2 days or
wonderful.
whatever, like,
Solitude.
I'm really okay with it, right? So I said, if too much space happens and there's too much distance taking place that I can't find a way back, I'm okay with being alone. And I don't want to get there.
No.
Right.
So like, I have to have these conversations with you. I have to make you realize that what you're doing is likely non-intentional, but you're also not conscious of it. So I have to make you conscious of it so that we can work through this. And he's such like an affectionate guy. Like, he loves affection. He loves to be touched. He loves to be hugged on. He loves to be kissed. He loves to, like, you know, all of that. And
showered.
And I'm a little more like, I just love to snuggle at night when we get in bed. I'll kiss you hello when you come in or whatever. I'm not all of that lovey-dovey. Funny, with my kids, yes. With him, I'm just like, yeah, I'll get you in the bedroom. You know, like, I'll get you in the bedroom kind of thing. So I've had to figure out what his love language is.
Yeah.
And how those things are really important to him and try and prioritize them. But yeah, the disconnect is easy to happen, and it's sometimes harder to fix if you're unwilling to be uncomfortable in that reconnecting. And I just say to people, be okay with being uncomfortable in order to reconnect, and be willing to fight for it, because it's easy to get disconnected. There's so much shit throughout our day that we're caught up with work. We're caught up with trying to provide. We're caught up with trying to be this for that person, trying to be that for that person, that it's easy to lose ourselves and our partner because we always just assume our partner is going to be there. So, we have to often, and I say this all the time to him too, listen to me, like, hear me. Don't just listen to me, like, hear what I'm saying, and don't listen, because sometimes you listen with ears of like things from the past that you assume I'm going to say, and you really miss what I'm actually saying. So like, get me there, like, just hear me here.
Yeah.
And that's been a lot of it. And knowing what the trigger buttons is, like, I know I can't say nothing about his family, so I never say anything about his family ever. In fact, most times I pretend
Edit that out.
No, it's okay. You he knows.
Oh
like,
my
I've had that conversation with him where I'm like, yo, it's just easier to pretend they're dead, because like, then we'll fight. Like, if somebody says something, if I have to say, yo, this happened with so and so, he gets upset. So I'm just like, I'll just pretend I ain't here.
That's so funny, because it's the same thing. I mean, it's not his family in general, but I do realize I did this one time. I'll never do it again. I said something about his dad, like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, this, I mean, maybe because your dad, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Isn't
push the
it
button,
some
didn't mean
shit
to.
how they like it's amazing.
Never
how-
again. But you got to know your partner.
For sure.
Yeah.
100%. I learned. I learned in the beginning, and then I thought we grew so much
Yeah.
that I one time went to say something, and I was like, oh, we're still back in this place. Okay, so everybody just died.
Yeah,
Like, in
never.
this moment, everybody is dead, and I will remember that moving forward.
Oh
but it's
my
amazing
gosh.
how, like, people romanticize childhood and romanticize, like, relationships and dynamics that they grew up in. And once I got that down pat, I went, okay. Never again. Never
Okay,
again.
so I have a question. So we spoke about your career and how driven you've been throughout your life, and then also trying to, navigate that as a family woman and being. I loved your phrase, the CEO of your own family, of the Spencer household. That's cute.
It's a full-time job.
Oh my gosh,
Like,
full time.
and nobody
probably
thinks
more
of it.
full time than a full time job.
100%.
But I want to know, like, was your last down day or day that you felt like you were just going through it, was it a physical stressor or a mental one? Do you have many down days?
Yeah, actually I do. I think because I've become, with myself especially, over, and mainly I think through like motherhood, I've become so good at compartmentalizing my own feelings. That doesn't mean like I'm not short fused with people, and sometimes like I bite before I step back and go, but I'm a great apologizer. Like I can own my shit and be accountable. And when I say apologizing, I'm apologizing because I'm taking this moment to be accountable, not offering an empty apology. Or not even apologizing necessarily for my reaction because I was having a feeling or moving through a moment, but apologizing for the fact that I could have done that better.
Right.
And so I apologize for, transferring what I was feeling onto you as opposed to just like going, hold on, I need a moment. But yeah, I think I had gotten so great at compartmentalizing. I didn't always allow myself to have the space to have a down moment. And in this last week, especially transitioning from my previous job, like I've recognized these feelings that I've had and working through them. So I've allowed myself to cry. Like I just met yesterday with my massage therapist, who's also a healer, and he said, he's like, I feel everything in your fascia, and everything there is anger. And it's okay for you to be angry. You just have to be angry at this moment. You have given the space and time to offer well wishes and offer positive words and try and fix and make sure everything is in place as you're leaving. But it's okay to step back now and just be in this moment of being angry and say it out loud.
Yeah.
Say it out loud, like own it. Like own that anger and be okay with that anger. And so, yeah, I'm now in the place of like I could be a little bit.
Yeah.
That I can be in this angry phase so I can continue to move on and just kind of.
So is
put
that
it
recovery? Do you go to this specialist frequently as your
I
form of recovery?
promised myself that I would start to go more often. I hadn't been in a while. I think because I had such tremendous loss in this past year, losing like my aunt and my grandmother within like 5 days of each other.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
And those were like my people.
Yeah.
My people. So that's how the year started. I mean, and then I lost David Arnold,
Yeah.
in
Oh, I
October,
remember
and
that,
then it
yeah.
led into losing my aunt
Oh
and
my
my
gosh.
grandmother. And, like David was like my brother. I always used to tease Julie that like, David was my husband and Chris was Julie's husband, but we had to marry opposites because David and I for sure would have killed each other because we're so alike in terms of how we argue, fight, like think about things. And Chris and Julie are like the lap dogs that just want to be loved on and pet and like so easy breezy going that like nothing would have gotten done in their household if they had been married. So we were always like this foursome. And always balanced each other out.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
losing David was really hard. And then watching my Julie, who's like my sister, go through this and going through this process with her was taking it on. And then losing my aunt and my grandmother, and then my son leaving for school. There was a lot of big transitional moments that
Life
happened.
keeps going, yep.
And I hadn't reached out to Peter, who's like my healer, because I wasn't even ready to deal with all of those feelings, mainly because I'm like, I still have work. I have to just focus on what this work is so I don't have space for myself to deal with myself. So I just kept putting myself further and further back. And when I saw him yesterday, he's like, you have to really just be still. You have to like every day be intentional about being still so you can find yourself again because you don't know where you are. And I was like, that's what I was saying. Like literally when you asked me the other day, like, how are you feeling? And I said to you, I don't know because I don't even know where I am.
Yeah.
He was like, no, I know. That's why I'm asking you again. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to text you all the time. Just where are you? To just constantly connect and be silent because in the silence is where you will find yourself.
Yep. And it's just so inspiring in that way, which it's also kind of it's nerve-wracking. Nerve-wracking because we just continue to see that even as we grow older, we're still in search of who we are and where we're at in that space.
Even more.
Yeah.
Even more.
And that's the crazy because I'm experiencing like, how am I going to get back to me again at this space as a mom of 3 kids, 3 new babies now. She's experienced this as her transition from New York, creating a new career for herself.
I think it happens throughout your entire life. You always got to re-find yourself. I think like you're reinvented
But
every
what's
so
funny
often.
is like you look for encouragement and love and light from someone like you, who I told you, I'm like, you're the GOAT, girl. You and your family, I mean, I just love it. It's just beautiful. But yet you're also in search of your me again. And so for me, I love this because I think to the viewers and to people who are listening in, it just shows like the village of women that you just have to have with each other to continue to move on and continue to push that pendulum forward. And just know that there's always work to be done. So it just goes to show that we all just have to really encourage each other as like we continue on, because here I am looking for answers. You know what I mean? I'm like desperate. Please, someone get me out of this. But it just goes to show it's just a phase, and there'll be a new phase and a new phase. And I just want to just really say, and both of us do, just want to say thank you so much
You're so welcome.
for coming on and bringing all of your wisdom.
Thank you.
All of your perseverance and discipline, and bringing that energy onto us. And we want all of you guys to hit the hotline. We want to know what phase of life you're currently in. And let's just keep this thing going. Let's keep each other accountable. Let's keep encouraging each other. My mom brain, it's like I stutter so much over my words right now. But let's keep going. Send in your thoughts. Also, if you have any questions about what it's like to be a female producer, we can get it. I'll send them to Vanessa, and she can give us some tips for you all. And we will see you next time.